My name is Daniel, and this happened to me 2 years ago during a short trip to Oregon. I had taken a week off from work because I desperately needed a break. My job had been stressing me out for months, and I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere far away from the noise of the city. That's when I found the Airbnb. It was a small wooden cabin deep in the woods, about 30 minutes outside a town called Pine Hollow. The pictures looked amazing. Tall pine trees, a peaceful little house, and a beautiful view of the forest. The best part was how cheap it was. Honestly, it almost seemed too cheap for a place that nice. But I didn't think much about it. The listing had good reviews and the host seemed friendly enough, so I booked it for 3 nights. The drive there took about 4 hours. By the time I left the main highway and started driving down the smaller forest roads, the sun had already begun to set. The deeper I drove into the woods, the more isolated everything felt. There were long stretches of road with no houses, no gas stations, nothing but trees. Eventually, my GPS told me to turn onto a small dirt road. That road led me even deeper into the forest. After about 10 minutes of driving through nothing but darkness and trees, I finally saw the cabin. It looked exactly like the pictures. A small wooden house sitting in the middle of tall pine trees. No neighbors, no other buildings nearby, just the cabin and the forest. At first, I thought it looked perfect. Quiet, peaceful, exactly what I needed. I parked my car near the front porch and grabbed my suitcase. The instructions said the key would be in a lockbox by the door. Sure enough, it was there. I punched in the code the host had sent me, and the box opened. The inside of the cabin was cozy. There was a small living room with a couch and a fireplace, a kitchen, a hallway, and 1 bedroom. It wasn't fancy, but it felt comfortable. I remember thinking that it was the perfect place to spend a few quiet days, but something about the house felt strange. Not obviously scary, just off. The kind of feeling you get when you're somewhere unfamiliar and your instincts tell you something isn't quite right. I tried to ignore it. I unpacked my bag, checked out the kitchen, and walked into the bedroom. That's when I noticed the first weird thing. Above the bed was a smoke detector, and on it, a tiny red light was blinking. At first, I thought it was just part of the device, but the blinking seemed strange. It wasn't slow like a normal smoke detector. It blinked every couple of seconds, almost like a recording light. I stood there staring at it for a moment, trying to decide if I was just being paranoid. Eventually, I convinced myself it was nothing. The house was old. Maybe the smoke detector was just malfunctioning, so I ignored it. Later that night, I made some food, watched a movie on my laptop, and eventually went to bed. Outside, the forest was completely silent. No traffic, no people, nothing but the wind moving through the trees. I must have fallen asleep pretty quickly. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard a sound outside the house, soft footsteps. Slow, careful footsteps, moving across the gravel near the side of the cabin. At first, I thought it might be an animal, maybe a deer or something. But then I heard something else. The sound of someone trying the door handle, very slowly, like they didn't want to wake anyone inside. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The Airbnb listing had said something very clearly. The nearest house was supposed to be miles away. For a few seconds, I just lay there in the dark, completely still. I wasn't even sure if I had actually heard something or if my mind was just playing tricks on me. The cabin was silent again, but then I heard it a second time. The same slow footsteps outside, crunching softly against the gravel beside the house. And then, the sound of the door handle moving. Someone was definitely there. My heart started beating so fast I could feel it in my chest. I slowly sat up in the bed and looked toward the window. Outside, it was completely dark. The trees blocked most of the moonlight, and I couldn't see anything clearly beyond the glass. For a moment, everything stopped again. No footsteps, no movement, just silence. I waited, listening carefully. Then suddenly, 3 slow knocks, not loud. Here are just 3 quiet taps on the front door. My entire body froze. Nobody should have been out there. The Airbnb listing had clearly said the cabin was isolated. No neighbors, no nearby houses, just forest. I grabbed my phone from the bedside table and checked the time. 2:17 a.m. My first thought was that maybe the owner had come by for some reason, but that didn't make any sense. Who shows up at someone's Airbnb in the middle of the night? I quietly got out of bed and walked toward the bedroom door. Every step felt heavier than the last. The hallway outside was dark, so I used the light from my phone to guide me. As I slowly moved toward the living room, I could feel my stomach tightening with anxiety. When I reached the front door, I stopped. Whoever had knocked wasn't knocking anymore. I stood there for nearly 30 seconds, listening. Nothing. Finally, I worked up the courage to look through the small window beside the door. But outside, there was nobody there, just darkness and trees. I opened the door slightly and stepped onto the porch. Cold night air rushed in. I looked around the yard. The gravel driveway was empty. No car, no person, nothing. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. But then I noticed something strange near the edge of the porch. Footprints. Fresh footprints in the dirt beside the house. Someone had definitely been walking there. My heart sank. The footprints continued around the side of the cabin, disappearing into the darkness between the trees. I quickly stepped back inside and locked the door. Something about this situation felt very wrong. I walked back into the bedroom and sat on the bed, trying to calm myself down. That's when I looked up again, at the smoke detector. The small red light was still blinking. Blink, blink, blink. And suddenly the thought came back to me. What if it wasn't a smoke detector? What if it was something else? The idea made my stomach twist. I grabbed a chair from the corner of the room and climbed up carefully. The device was mounted to the ceiling, just above the bed. Up close, it looked slightly different than a normal smoke detector. There was a tiny dark lens inside the plastic casing, and the red light. It was blinking right beside it. My heart dropped. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a camera. Someone had installed a hidden camera directly above the bed. For a few seconds, I just stared at it, each feeling a mixture of shock and anger. Then I quickly climbed down from the chair. My mind started racing. Who installed it? The owner. And if there was one camera, how many more were there in the house? Suddenly, the cabin didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like a trap. I grabbed my phone and opened the Airbnb app to check the host profile again. The account looked normal, decent reviews, friendly messages, nothing suspicious. But something about this situation didn't make sense. Why would someone secretly record their guests? And more importantly, why had someone been walking outside the cabin in the middle of the night? I decided I wasn't staying there another night. I started packing my things immediately, but as I was putting my clothes back into my bag, I heard something that made my blood run cold. It was a noise from the hallway. Not outside the house, inside the house. A quiet creak, like someone had just stepped on the wooden floor. And I suddenly realized something terrifying. I had checked the front door, but I had never checked the back door. The sound came again, a slow creak, somewhere in the hallway. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen beside the bed, barely breathing. The cabin was supposed to be empty. I had locked the front door myself, which meant there was only one other possibility. Someone had come in through the back. My mind started racing. I slowly picked up my phone and turned off the flashlight so whoever was in the house wouldn't see the light from the bedroom. The room fell into complete darkness. Then I listened. Another creak. Closer this time. The hallway floorboards were old, and every step made a soft cracking sound. Someone was definitely moving through the house, very slowly, like they were trying not to make noise. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might give me away. I looked around the bedroom quickly, trying to figure out what to do. The only window faced the forest. Jumping out would mean running into complete darkness, but staying inside the cabin with whoever was out there felt even worse. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. The bedroom door handle moved slightly. Just a small movement, like someone was gently testing if the door was locked. Luckily, I had closed the door earlier without even thinking about it. The handle moved again, slowly. Whoever was outside clearly didn't want to make noise. They were being careful, watching, waiting. For a few seconds, everything went quiet again. Then I heard the footsteps move away from the bedroom door. Back down the hallway. I took that moment as my only chance. I quietly opened the bedroom window. Cold night air rushed into the room. The forest outside was pitch black, but at least it was an escape. I climbed out carefully and dropped onto the ground outside the cabin. The dirt was cold under my feet as I crouched beside the wall of the house. For a moment, I stayed perfectly still, listening. Inside the cabin, the footsteps started moving again, but now they were inside the bedroom. The bedroom I had just escaped from. Whoever it was had opened the door. My chest tightened as I realized something horrifying. If I had waited even 30 seconds longer, they would have walked in while I was still inside. I slowly moved toward the front of the cabin, staying low. My car was parked about 20 feet away, but as I got closer, something caught my eye through the living room window. Inside the cabin, I saw movement. A man. He was standing in the bedroom doorway, tall, wearing dark clothes. His face was mostly hidden in the shadows. But what terrified me the most was what he was doing. He was holding something in his hand, a small device, and he was pointing it toward the bed, like he was recording. Then suddenly the man turned his head toward the window, toward me. For a split second, our eyes met through the glass. My heart stopped. He knew I was there. I ran. I sprinted straight to my car, unlocked it, and jumped inside. As the engine started, I looked back toward the cabin. The front door suddenly opened. The same man stepped outside onto the porch, but he didn't chase me. He just stood there, watching, completely still, as if he knew something I didn't. I didn't wait to find out what that was. I slammed the car into reverse, while I turned around and sped down the dirt road as fast as I could. Branches scraped against the sides of the car as I drove back toward the main road. I didn't stop driving until I reached the nearest town. That night I checked into a small motel and reported everything to Airbnb and the police. The officers went to investigate the cabin the next morning, but when they arrived, the place was empty. No owner, no cameras, nothing. Whoever had been there had completely disappeared. But the strangest part came later that day, when Airbnb contacted me about the listing. They told me something that still gives me chills when I think about it. The cabin I had booked had been removed from the platform 2 weeks earlier. According to their records, my reservation should never have existed. And the account that sent me the check-in instructions didn't belong to any registered host. Even now, I still wonder about one thing. If the listing wasn't real, then how many other people had stayed in that cabin before me, without ever realizing someone was secretly